Good morning, everyone. I'm Efrat Pfefferman, Executive Director of United Way of Monroe County, and thank you for waking up with United Way this morning. We are so excited for this wonderful panel that I get to chat with today. As you may know, if you've been tuning in, the Wake Up series this year has really been looking at the pandemic and how we shifted, pivoted, responded as a community, and what lessons were learned in that, and what will keep for the future, whether that's talking about how we shelter people or feed people or care for children. That's kind of been the topic, and I think this one, caring for our children, I'm really excited about, and hopefully you are too, because think about the challenges of that, caring for kids in a pandemic. We'll get into all of that in just a minute, but I just want to welcome you. I want to thank our sponsors for the 2021 Wake Up series, which include our premier series sponsor, Bloomington Township, our presenting sponsors, IU Credit Union and the Community Foundation of Bloomington, Monroe County, and our program sponsors, Duke Energy and Old National Bank. Let's give our sponsors a big round of applause for allowing us to be able to come together for these great conversations. And big round of applause to our co-collaborators at IU's PACE program. Mark Fraley's here today behind the scenes helping. We so appreciate that, and appreciate Jen and everyone else helping to pull this together, and all of you for being here this morning. So we'll get right into it, introduce our speakers, and get to chatting. And as you have questions, if you have any questions that you think of, there's a Q&A feature you can type those into so that we can get to those towards the end of our program here. So with that being said, we have three amazing women here. I'm proud to work with them and know them, and just looking forward to hearing from you this morning. Katie Broadfoot is the Executive Director of MACM, or Monroe County United Ministries, United Way member agency. Katie herself received her MPA from IU's SPIA O'Neill now, and a BS in sociology in Albion College. And as the executive director of MACM, she oversees the Compass Early Learning Center. Compass is the only local program with its own sliding scale, in addition to other assistance programs, which really is a critical part of the safety net for low and middle income families in our community. Then we have Courtney Payne Taylor, the operations director for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Bloomington, another fabulous United Way member agency. And Courtney joined the clubs of Bloomington in June of last year as they were reopening after that shutdown. So she was involved in reopening as well as the process to serve kids as our schools shut down, and navigated us through the red, yellow, green phases, putting the safety of their members at the top priority. Then we have Jennifer Myers, our good friend. She's the director of Monroe Smart Start, which is a leadership initiative of the Community Foundation of Bloomington, Monroe County. And as our state county initiated that shelter-in-place order when COVID started, it really became apparent that our childcare and workforce sectors would be deeply affected. And so Monroe Smart Start and the Community Foundation began working with a coalition of local leaders and educators, early learning providers, to address the emergency and essential childcare needs in Monroe County, in addition to all they've been doing all along. So I'm going to let them say a little bit more about their programs, because that was just a real quick intro, and then we'll get to our conversation. So how about we go to Katie first, and then Courtney and Jennifer.
Sure. So I just want to say first, thank you so much for having us here today. We're really looking forward to talking about caring for our children during this pandemic. As Efrat mentioned, my name is Katie Broadfoot. I'm the Executive Director of Monroe County United Ministries, which is affectionately known as MACM here in the community. MACM is a nonprofit agency in Bloomington that has served the low-income population of Monroe County for over 80 years now. We seek to eliminate generational poverty for the people we serve through our two main programs, the Compass Early Learning Center and the Self-Sufficiency Center. So just a very quick overview, Compass provides a very important safety net for local families. We offer 84 spots for children 1 to 5 years old, and 83% of our kids are from low-income families, with almost 40% that are considered extremely low income. We're the only licensed high-quality center in the county to provide our own sliding scale, in addition to the voucher programs from the federal and state governments. And so what we do with that is we catch so many low-income families who have just enough income that to deem them ineligible for those assistance programs, but they still fall well below the county's self-sufficiency standards. So many families with young children already choose between spending a significant portion of their income on childcare, which could be either finding a cheaper and potentially lower quality option or leaving the workforce altogether to care for their children. But lower income families are often further forced to sacrifice other needs and opportunities to make things work. So Compass is here to be accessible and available to all Monroe County families.
Thank you, Katie. Courtney, tell us a little bit about the Boys and Girls Clubs.
Yes, good morning, everyone. And I think it's so appropriate that I'm on the call with all of these wonderful people, because it was through the partnerships with all of you that made getting through the pandemic possible and keep serving our kids. As Efrat said, my name is Cory Ben Taylor. I'm the operations director for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Bloomington. It was great timing. I actually applied for and was offered the job in March.
Oh my God.
And then due to the shutdown, we kind of delayed when I actually started with the organization, but I was in touch with them throughout that whole time. I'm honored to work for the Boys and Girls Club. We are glad to be able to serve kids in their out of school time. So pretty much anytime kids are not in the school building, they are able to be at the club. So during the school year, what that looks like is after school programming. We focus on categories of healthy lifestyles, academic success, and good character and leadership for our members. We serve kids traditionally ages 6 up to 18 years old, and we hope kids stay with us throughout their entire elementary school, middle school, and high school careers. During break camps and summer, we actually serve kids from 7:30 a.m. until 6 p.m. So we really get to spend a lot of time with these kids. And that's what really makes the difference is, as our executive director likes to say, you know, it's time in the magic soup. So we get great people and we get quality programs. And then we need to have our kids in there as long as possible to get that, you know, kind of impact on them. We really look to get kids, you know, progressing in life and showing that positive impact. And what I've seen in my time there is just incredible. The kids that come to us day one, and then, you know, seeing their growth. We offer services to them as well as their parents. We're starting to engage more in how can we help the parents have more support to serve the kids. And we also like to connect them with all of the great, I mean, Bloomington is incredible, all of the great supports out there. So we enjoy connecting our families to the opportunities that are provided by many of you.
And the annual fee for all of this is
$20 a year. And that, of course, we have so many ways to reduce that fee even more. We offer scholarships. We have people that are part of the Anthem health insurance get that free. People that are part of the BHA neighborhood get it for $5. We would never turn away a kid based on money. But yep, $20 a year, and they can come see us almost every day of the year.
Can't beat that. Thank you, Courtney. And Jennifer, tell us about Monroe Smart Start a little bit.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'll echo Courtney's sentiments at first. Grateful for everyone in these little tiny boxes on my screen. But as I'm looking at the participant list, so many of you are involved in Monroe Smart Start initiatives and really impact the lives of children and families. So thank you for all that you do and your partnership. So yeah, as Efrat mentioned, I'm Jennifer, the director of Monroe Smart Start. August marked 10 years with my work with Monroe Smart Start. I can't believe it's been 10 years. It's gone like that. And it is a leadership initiative of the Community Foundation. We've invested over $2 million in early learning initiatives within our community. But Monroe Smart Start was formed by the United Way and the Community Foundation in 2007. And I know many of you were involved in some work groups around that when that coalition first formed. It formed with a cross sector of stakeholders who came together focusing on the first 5 years of a child's life and the importance of high quality early learning opportunities for children, and how that impacted our community. We're grateful for the work of those stakeholders early on, and it's impacted what we've been able to do today. So in January, Monroe Smart Start will celebrate 15 years when the coalition first began. And we focus on children being ready for school and ready for life by increasing the number of high quality programs in Monroe County and the number of available childcare seats. We coordinate professional development and early childhood educator recognition, promote family engagement and early literacy opportunities, community partners, and stakeholder engagements. Connect families with programs that fit their financial needs, like Courtney was discussing, if they need sliding scale or a child care development voucher, or free access to free childcare. We support On My Way Pre-K, which is free pre-K for 4-year-olds, and provide the required matching funds that's needed for each one of those vouchers in our county. And we advocate for high quality early learning opportunities for all children, something that's been truly essential during the pandemic. Before the pandemic, we knew that childcare was on the forefront and needed a lot of advocacy efforts, but definitely during the pandemic, we've seen a lot of funding come our way with early childhood that's taken some advocacy efforts from regional and state partners. Recently, we're expanding work into some of our neighboring communities like Orange County, Lawrence, Martin, and Morgan. We received a grant from IU Health Community Impact Investment Funds, Early Learning Indiana, and Regional Opportunity Initiatives to take what we're doing with Monroe Smart Start and start to grow it out into our region. And similarly, Early Learning Indiana has been really generous to us, to our county, over the last several years. And so we're recently recognized as an early childhood shared services hub. We just began to launch our hub. We have 12 local high quality early childhood educating, our early childhood programs that are currently receiving support to increase their business acumen, decreasing their operational expenses, and freeing up those additional dollars to put back into staff wages. We're super grateful for this opportunity, and we really see it as a long-term solution to childcare challenges relative to wages.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for all your leadership on that. And okay, so let's set the stage by taking us back to March of 2020 when Courtney was applying for a job or getting hired on. And the rest of us were like, what is happening and what do we do? Talk to me about just, the story of your agency as you're realizing what's happening with COVID and how that is going to impact what you do. What was your response? What were the challenges? Run us through that, and we can go in any order if one of you would just like to jump in and start us off.
I can start off.
Great.
So for us at Macam, I would say that responding to the ongoing pandemic has been demanding, time consuming, and very expensive, probably just like most organizations. At the onset of the pandemic, so back to last March or 2 Marches ago at this point, I don't even know what time is anymore. We saw 2 major patterns at the beginning. So we saw a lot of our families that we serve have parents or guardians who work in the service industry, and a lot of them experienced an immediate reduction in job hours, if not job loss altogether. So that was the first thing that we saw. And then the second thing, of course, was school-age kids were sent home from school. So that created enrollment withdrawals of younger children. And so those 2 patterns disrupted our agency in a couple of different ways. So the reduction in hours, because we are a sliding scale organization, our tuition is based on family size and income. When your hours are reduced, your income is also reduced. So people who were paying, say, $145 a week dropped to $65 a week. And when you have 84 children in your center, you can see how that multiplies quite quickly there, especially when really the true cost of care for a spot in our center is over $190. So we were already running a deficit there. The other thing is when parents had to stay home with their school age kids, they pulled their children out from care, and we didn't have enrollment demands at the time to replace those children quickly, and therefore replace that income quickly. And then we saw a lot of our staff have school age children, so they had to stay home with their children. So that created a need for more staff. So as all of these things are starting to go on, and of course, all of those happen immediately. So there's very little time to really respond. At this point, we are simply reacting to the world that we're living in. But then since that time, some other unanticipated challenges have primarily been the constantly changing best practices and recommendations when someone in our center has a positive COVID case. So to put that into perspective, we have closed individual classrooms 7 times over the course of the last 16 months, and our protocol has been different in 5 of those times. So that in and of itself, at the beginning, both staff and parents, I would say, seemed a bit more fearful and cautious. So they were happy to jump on board with the protocol, but they were also happy to pull their kids from the program left and right. So everything was a bit of a mess. In time, though, it became more of an annoyance. So the challenge of dealing with the repercussions of closing with things like parent frustration when classrooms close. So obviously, it is not convenient at all to have to quarantine a 3-year-old for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, by closing the classroom, we're creating that very barrier to employment that we were set up to eliminate. So that was very frustrating and really sad for all of us. So what we ended up doing as we, realized we were going to be in this for a while is we modified our other services and expanded them as much as we possibly could. So offering stipends for parents to hire independent sitters, not charging them when our center was closed, online grocery orders from our food pantry and offering deliveries, financial assistance. All of those impact our agency finances, but all of those things make life just a little bit easier for the people that we serve. And then I would say the last thing has been the toll on mental health of our childcare staff. It has been huge.
Yeah.
For anybody who has worked in childcare, or even, me as an administrator watching people work in childcare, it is already a very challenging job. But the pandemic has definitely created very abrupt schedule changes, new instructional formats, declines in mental health and well-being. So all of those factors led a lot of our staff to be pretty anxious, overwhelmed, stressed, all of which negatively impacts their ability to provide that high quality care and education to the children. So also the instability and constant flux of the job itself, which would be unpredictable room closures, personal risks, and so on, caused higher than normal turnover. And the field already experiences a great deal of staffing challenges before we even bring the pay issue into it, which is a whole different can of worms there. So I would say overall, our response has been and will remain very cautious. We have a whole set of protocol, and I think it probably seems a bit excessive, but our goals have been first and foremost to keep people as safe as we possibly can, to make sure we're staying true to our agency's goal to remove barriers to employment and education. So we try to reduce the risk of having to close as much as we possibly can. And we realized very quickly that we really wanted to keep our staff. So we've really focused on increasing those wages and trying to take measures to make sure that morale stays as high as possible. So every time we close, we always pay our staff their full rate so that they never have to fear losing their job or having their income cut, because I would just hate it if they felt like they had to choose another job because we keep closing.
Yeah.
So overall, as has been mentioned, we've felt very, very fortunate to have been the recipient of numerous COVID relief grants. We received 2 PPP loans. There's been an outpouring of community support. Without that funding, our response simply wouldn't have been feasible. And I think we would have seen the fate that so many childcare providers and businesses in general have seen, to have no choice but to close. So we are just so thankful, and we intend to be the best possible stewards of that generosity moving forward.
Thank you so much. That you had a lot in there. That is some things I didn't even consider. You know, the revenue that you started off talking about, the drop when families pull out because they, like you said, have kids that need to be home from school. And wow, that's very interesting. Thank you for taking us through that. We'll come back to some of those things, but who would like to go next? Courtney or Jennifer, jump in.
I can go next. And I think, I imagine a lot of us are going to echo similar things. For us at the Boys and Girls Club, I know two things that are always so important to us are, one, the safety of our children. I mean, we obviously want our children there. We want the positive impact, but in that world, safety is the number one priority. So obviously there were a lot of questions on, we have to get open and take care of the kids, but how do we do that safely? And I know that was a struggle. A lot of us were seeking that information that nobody had early on what do we do to keep the kids safe. And our other big concern was staff. I'm glad that we were just honored with one of the best places to work in Bloomington. And I think that just speaks to the fact that we really care about our staff. And that was one of the big struggles early on. We have almost 100 between AmeriCorps, work study, and hourly staff. We have over 100. So that's a lot of people that, would be displaced to not get open. So I wasn't there for that, but I was talking to Jeff, and they developed a task force right away. Immediately they pivoted into a task force to figure out, what do we do? Initially, that looked like kind of what we do in the club, we call pulse checks. It's just quick little check-ins to see how things are going, what's going on. And so we did that on multiple levels. We checked in with our donors, especially the older donors in our world, make sure that they're okay. Checking in with our families to see what their greatest needs were, and checking in with our staff. Initially, we pivoted in 3 days. They did a virtual club. So kids that were stuck home alone or home with their parents would at least have something to engage in. We had staff creating videos, creating little packets for STEM activities and stuff that could be distributed out to the kids. So that was the very first step. The second step, we recognized a lot of our families needed support, not just with food, but things with diapers, laundry, dish soap, just really basic things. So we developed the food and supply drive that ran out of the Ferguson Crestmont Club, delivering that to up to 75 families a week, twice a week. That was a wonderful experience. And then in April, in less than a month, we were able to open the Ellettsville Club to serve our CERC camps, our community emergency relief camps, really focused working with IU Health and some of those people that didn't have an option to stay home. They had to go to work and their kids needed somewhere to go. So it was really great to be able to get that opened early on. But again, I think, the staffing was a challenge. I think the other problem too, for us, we're very supported by the gifts of individual donors. And so that was a big question. The whole world is very concerned about what the future is going to look like. Are people going to still feel comfortable to donate money in this time? And thank God we have the best community and we have the best people. So we had people leaning in around us, but I think those were our biggest fears. And I do remember early on the CERC camp, they had taped off boxes on the floor that represented 6-foot boxes. And the kids did not leave that box unless they were following a certain path. And we were wiping down everything that came into the food and supply drive. And there were a lot of those things that we've since learned are not as important or maybe have a little bit more flexibility, but we really took every step possible to be able to take care of that for our kids.
Thank you. Thanks, Courtney.
Yeah, taking us back up front, you maybe go back to 2 Marches ago. We were, as many of us in our county, on spring break. And so we were driving to Texas to see my sister. And I think we were maybe 4 hours from there when I got the phone call, and then my phone never stopped for just, well, it feels like years now. We're just, as like you said, Katie, it's just time is just kind of morphed. It's just overlapping, and we just continue to go on the new normal. But definitely, lots of challenges as these ladies have already highlighted, but just, focusing on our early care world, the pandemic highlighted disparities as families struggled to find childcare. Families with 2 or more children, they faced an even larger burden, both by cost and also by access of, what was actually available. We watched in our community, we have 52 high quality programs, and the state gives a high quality designation if you're a level 3 or 4 in Indiana's past quality rating system. So in our community, we have 52, like I said. We watched that number just kind of slowly decrease over a couple days, and then all of a sudden, just boom, we were slashed. So we really went from 52 almost overnight to 8 that were open. That's not to say we only had 8 programs open in the onset of the pandemic countywide, but we only had 8 high quality programs that were open. And of those 8, 1 was a center, 1 was a ministry. So when you think about capacity, they can serve more children, but the majority open were family child care homes. So anywhere from 10 to 16 children max. So we really did not have a whole lot of slots for early care to obtain care if they needed it. And then, even more significantly, what we realized is that we had no solutions to aftercare or school age children. So when schools stopped, we realized, wow, they are the child care, right? So there was no place for those children to go. And so I got to know Courtney quite well early on, and so blessed to say that I'm happy we got that opportunity. And so we spent a lot of time in these small boxes every week with our task force. And she played a super important role in that. So thanks again for all that work, Courtney. But shelter in place orders left childcare programs uncertain of operations, and they were concerned about the health and safety of the children they were watching, of their staff. They were concerned for their safety and then what they might be taking back home. And also, thinking about enrollment, as Katie hit upon early on, families were pulling their children out of childcare. So we didn't have that urgent need for full enrollment. And we couldn't really serve full enrollment because we really needed to be able to allow for social distancing. And so that caused the ability to generate the income that's needed for a family child care, a center, ministry, any and all programs to really be able to generate the funds needed to stay open. Because if anything, we know for a program to be sustainable, they have to fill every single seat. They have to be able to collect their tuition on time. And that doesn't happen longevity of a program if those two things aren't in place. And so it was a real crisis mode. And so we're really thankful to our state of Indiana that really stepped up and was, quickly was able to release CARES Act funding. And so programs were able to secure not only funding for staff that weren't able to come to work, but maybe chose not to work. They may have had a comorbidity. They may have already had, an immunity was compromised. And so it allowed them to continue to pay the wages of their staff. Similarly, for families that just, they weren't sure if they really wanted the child to be at childcare for the safety value, programs were compensated for the tuition of that child. And so the CARES Act funding, no doubt, retained our current programs. Without that, we would not have the programs open today. It would have closed our programs. And so Indiana is fortunate for the leaders that really played an instrumental part in that and releasing those fundings early and continue to release fundings today. And so we're super grateful for the American Rescue Plan funding and then also things coming down the pipeline from a federal level. But the new policies and procedures, like Katie mentioned, they were updated daily, really, to start, weren't they? I mean, mask, no mask, social distancing, how does that look? How often do we really clean and what can we clean with? And so that was very taxing on the mental health of those that were caretaking for the children. The stress level was super high. And then the need to make sure no one wanted to be the first, right? No one wanted to be the first that was responsible for a child that was getting the coronavirus, that was hospitalized. I mean, no one wanted to make the news or the paper around that. And so there was real stress to making sure that we were doing things right. And I can say, hands down, our programs did a fantastic job. Those 8 programs that were open, stayed open the entire time, never closed a day because of the pandemic, never had one case of the coronavirus early on. And so, knowing that the majority of them were homes, they already had the ability to really social distance. They were already small in number. So when we saw these pod models being implemented around, and Boys and Girls Club was fantastic in implementing the pod model, we really learned a lot about how to care for children in smaller numbers, and then what it took to be able to provide a stimulating environment that was still high quality and allowed the children to learn. And so we saw lots of needs for plexiglass going up. We saw lots of needs for mask and hand sanitizer. We saw lots of needs for individualized boxes where children weren't having to share crayons or Play-Doh or small manipulative toys that where, germs couldn't be passed. And I'll say that, high quality programs do a fantastic job cleaning, even, before pandemic. They've really stepped up the game after that. And so I think you could eat off most of their floors. I think that, it really is, a clean and safe environment. And I can't echo that enough, how well they did. I'm so proud of them and sticking it out. And so there was a real need to increase communication among families. And we saw that in our own nonprofits. We were working more than we did pre-pandemic. We were scheduling Zooms back to back, and we were taking so many phone calls from concerns or things that were changing. And so this is where I think a lot of our early care programs found themselves in, is really trying to alleviate the fears of family members. And on the flip side, trying to communicate to family members should their child have been potentially exposed to the coronavirus. And early on, we were really trying to navigate those new terms. What did quarantine mean and what did isolate? Do we isolate? Do we quarantine? Like, we were so confused. And so I saw that Carol is on the phone, and so super grateful for Amy and her team over at the WIC office, who jumped on a Zoom call and led us through those terminology. What does it mean? When do you do this? And we made really great friends with them, and they adopted, overnight, best friends to our early care providers, to take phone calls, to help them work through situations, to realize if a staff, needed to isolate, if a staff needed to quarantine, if they needed to shut down a classroom or a whole program. And they continue to be such really great thought partners. And gosh, I don't know where we would have been without them. So fantastic team. So thanks, Carol, and for your team and all that work. And we also saw that supplies were really hard to obtain. I don't know if you remember early on, but it was really hard to get milk. And so it was really hard.
I remember.
Yes, right. The toilet paper. From Texas, I was trying to order every digital thermometer that popped up on Amazon. And right when I got them into my cart, I couldn't get them by the time I checked out. They were gone. So there's this real need and fear of getting everything we needed so that we can make sure that we could take care of children safely. And I think, if anything, that was the fear, that was a driver that really escalated a lot of anxiety among our early care and caused some PTSD. I think, if we're being quite honest, as we're thinking back to those times, because essentially they never shut down and they never had a relief from that. It just continues to change. And so really, we're all still living in that early days and just adapting to the new norms. And so the social emotional needs, like Katie already mentioned, is real significant. We had a grant that we reverted into some dollars to support social emotional learning for adults. And so we grouped together a conscious discipline professional learning community, and really allowed teachers, early childhood educators, to begin to help to fill their buckets. Being depleted, and I think that it was a welcomed opportunity, and we had really great success in the numbers of early care educators that participated. But nonetheless, the worker shortages, we really haven't touched up on that in a way that gives it the proper acknowledgement. But we were short-staffed before the pandemic. And so what happened is that when we shut down classrooms and we started to social distance children, and we were no longer serving classrooms at full capacity, we no longer needed all the staff. And so some of the staff didn't want to return to the childcare. They got a little bit of break from that classroom environment, or they were staying home and collecting unemployment. And so it was really hard to get back the workforce that we've lost. And we're still trying to build back that workforce that was already unparalleled match to begin. And so we have a lot of work for us ahead. And that's one help that we really need from the community. And as we think and we look at all the places hiring, pre-pandemic, we were always hiring in early childhood, but now everyone's hiring. I made probably a terrible joke to my husband one day when we were walking in the mall, and I said, it might be easier if places just started posting a sign that said, we're not hiring. Because right now everyone is. And we can't, as an early care sector, we can't keep up with the hourly wages that are being offered by places like CVS and Target and Best Buy and Starbucks. $15 to $18 an hour to start. You're not going to see it in this world. And in this world is where we need it, because families don't work if we don't have the proper credentialed individuals to take care of the children.
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. A lot of good reflections and in all of that. So let's dig in a little more. And folks in the audience, if you have any questions for our panelists, please drop them in the Q&A. But all right, we heard about some of the challenges and things that you had to react to in the pandemic. Everything from revenue, staff needs, the mental health toll, trying to balance, your agency mission against the reality on the ground. We heard about the disparities for families trying to find childcare. We heard about some physical things like plexiglass and individual supplies for kids and all that. So I'm curious to hear what will stick, and what we'll build on that maybe 3 years ago we just didn't even have on our radar. And is it the things like is the plexiglass going to stay? Is Katie, you talked about you paying staff even when you have to send them home. Will that stay? What are we going to keep? Because maybe it was an unexpected positive thing, right?
Yeah, I'm happy to start off with a response to that. I would say one of the most important things that I would hope that all of us knew, but has become so apparent and just really was reinforced by the pandemic, is that in the childcare field, really in all fields, we need to pay our staff well, and we need to take care of them. So despite financial uncertainty, we have actually increased all of our staff wages fairly substantially. And this has been in large part thanks to CARES Act funding and funding from Early Learning Indiana, which I hope sticks around. But when you increase your staff wages, particularly for direct service providers, you keep the quality. And without quality staff, you simply cannot have a quality program. And you can't have quality staff unless you pay them a living and competitive wage for the work that they do. So we've been very fortunate at Compass to see the highest staff retention in the last 16 months that we've had in years, which it's really good. But we attribute that to the competitive wages for the field, but also taking actions to really care for our staff, whether that's offering catered meals every once in a while, really encouraging that they use their PTO time, having generous sick leave that's separate from PTO leave, and then extending FMLA leave for COVID if we need to. We also received a grant to offer mental health stipends to staff, and those actions have made a huge difference. And I think that we should have them all the time, whether we have a pandemic or not. The other thing that I hope sticks, and one thing, I don't know how we managed to do this, but we did it. We phased out our part-time classroom staff and decided to add one full-time classroom support staff member to every single classroom in our center, both to help initially keep children better distanced while maintaining, giving them plenty of attention and learning opportunities. But we found that has really helped reduce staff burnout because now the lead teachers are able to get out of their classroom and get their lesson planning done, do professional development, take a break. Something as simple as just being able to go and use the bathroom during the day. These things that were never even on my radar, that people in any field couldn't just do that, but they couldn't. And I think restoring some of these human dignity things to our staff has helped so much. So we're committed to keeping our classrooms structured that way. It will cost us around $140,000 more every single year, but it is so worth it. And then the last thing that I hope sticks around for us at MACM and the Compass Early Learning Center is the pandemic really provided the catalyst that we needed to link our two centers, the Compass Early Learning Center with the Self-Sufficiency Center. So that's not the topic today, but just to give a quick little overview, our Self-Sufficiency Center offers basic needs assistance, but also longer term financial stability coaching. And we've seen a big influx of Compass parents and guardians taking advantage of those services. And that's exactly what we want, because that's how we can eventually eliminate generational poverty for those families that we serve. So one of the things that we did was we set up a smaller version of our large food pantry and hygiene closet, but it's specifically housed within the Compass Early Learning Center, and parents are welcome to utilize that at any time. So parents are actually using it. It's creating that connection where now they're making appointments with our coaches. And they say it's a lot more convenient to just swing in when they're already picking up their children and grab a few things rather than go to a different building, make an appointment and that kind of thing. So yes, it's been a lot of those little realizations, but they've turned into really big things over time.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what I think we're trying to grasp. And yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, and I could definitely echo staff care was a big one, being able to get our staff paid more. And we didn't have an option to get that staff in, especially when the school shut down and having to get enough staff to surround these kids for e-learning. And I think engaging them too in the process and making sure that their concerns were heard and that they could feel like they were part of the decision-making process, I think really made a big difference. I won't go too much into staff care because I think, a lot of it echoes what you already discussed. A big change for us was the amount of communication. Before the pandemic, parents enrolled their members and then they might drop off one day, they might not. And it was very passive as far as communication with parents beyond just what happened at pickup and drop off. And that's what allowed us to determine what the needs were and who needed to be served. Was we went in this over communication mode with our parents and needs assessments and surveys just left and right, and really taking the time to talk to them and say, what do you need the most? So that's something that we are definitely keeping up is that communication. I think it just makes us better. It makes us more transparent, and it just helps us understand those needs. Hygiene, I think, we all wash our hands before we eat and things like that. But I mean, this put us in hand washing madness. We had timers in the buildings, 45 minutes, everyone is washing their hands. And now we're not quite at that level anymore, but kids do wash their hands when they arrive at the club. We are doing more hand washing. And not only did we not see any COVID transmission in our clubs, but we were seeing a lot less kids out sick in general. Nice. And so that's something we really want to think about continuing is how do we keep some of these COVID cleaning and hygiene measures up to just prevent overall transmission of anything within the club. Right. Virtual, I think there's a lot of efficiencies in Zoom. I know we kind of had Zoom burnout, but then as we start to return to life, I know I was talking to some coworkers about, oh my gosh, there were 2 in-person meetings. I forgot about you can't just click over and you're in your next meeting. You actually have to drive somewhere now. And I've got to put a buffer time. So I think, having some of our meetings remaining virtual are enabling us to, again, just provide more time to what we need to do and not necessarily in that travel. And then the community. I know that's something Boys and Girls Club has always been strong on is community, but that's something that has to continue. Again, there's lots of people come to me and say, oh my God, Boys and Girls Club, you did incredible. You were just all stars. None of what we did would have been possible without the people that surrounded us. United Way, Community Foundation, Banneker Center, MCCSC, RBB. I mean, I could talk for the next 12 minutes about all of our partners, but I think that's such a key role in doing that. And I know you shouted out Carol and IU Health with that. I've got to add to that Penny Cottle and Christina over at the Monroe County Health Department. I was calling and emailing them like every other day. What do we do with this situation? And again, it was that community that made us shine, that made everything possible. So I think those were my biggest takeaways that we were going to definitely continue as we move forward.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I mean, lots of lessons learned. Who would have ever thought we would have silver linings when we, equate that with the pandemic? But there have been some silver linings, some lessons learned, some things that do need to stick. And so when we think of a national level, childcare challenges really gained national exposure, and we need that to stick. We need people to understand the value and worth of childcare and childcare workers. We need communities to see that childcare is the economic driver for a community. And when we don't have that in place, we do lose money. Ready Nation found that the economic impact, the lack of sufficient infant and toddler care alone cost us $57 billion a year. That's a B. $1 billion a year. And so when we look here locally, as far as the impact for our local employers of money that's lost, we lose $46 million annually due to childcare related costs. That's every year. What could we do with $46 million every single year if we invest the dollars where we know it needs to be? So definitely a big lesson learned that I do hope continues. And we did see some changes from a state standpoint around subsidy.
Mhm.
And so some of those things I hope that do stick. And we've been fortunate to be a part of a community work group along with the state that's really looking at subsidy and really trying to think differently about how subsidy is allocated. I know that the state is doing some good research around other states and thinking about what is within the possibility of policy to reshape policy that doesn't have to go back and get legislative approval. And so I think the pandemic really allowed people to start creating these solutions and realizing that there are a lot of things within the control of from a policy standpoint that could be changed that benefits families and alleviates some burden. And so where we saw that were elimination of copays for families that received CCDF. That was huge in the pandemic. Another thing that we saw that I do hope that sticks is the job search. So finally, for families who are in between employment, they need childcare, right? They can't interview if they don't have someone to watch their children, and they can't work if they don't have reliable childcare. So that really just creates this vicious cycle that's just unattainable, right, for any of that work or childcare vouchers. And so job search has been instrumental for CCDF families and for on my way pre-K families. And so that's something that I hope that can stick. And I hope that the funding coming through to programs sticks somehow in some way, shape, or form, that our programs can really develop the smart business acumen that's needed so that they can support their business long-term. They can support their workers long-term. The American Rescue Plan is providing some opportunities to programs throughout our state that need some good thought behind that through those dollars and how they will be good stewards of those dollars and generate some great outcomes that can impact them for longer than just a short term or to meet short-term needs. And so we have got to get to a place in this childcare sector where we're not putting Band-Aids on, but we're really looking long-term and forming some sustainable solutions to the problems that plague us.
Thanks, Jennifer. And I think that's a great segue for just our final question here. Unless the audience has any questions they want to toss out real quick. How can this audience, and this will be also sent out in an email to many more people with some information and resources. How can this audience, as the advocates and passionate community members that we all are, help with these things that you're talking about? Should we be talking to our policymakers and at which level? Are there actual pending legislation issues at this moment we need to be aware of? How can we get involved and help make these things stick for the long term now that we have seen the light, so to speak?
Yes, we do need you reaching out to policymakers, reach out to Congress. The great thing is that there's a lot of social media campaigns. And so with just a quick click, it can generate a letter that really goes out and even generates who Congress is in your zip code area. So it really is easy to be able to do that and honestly takes sometimes 30 seconds. I've timed it for myself. It really just does not take a whole lot of time, and it does generate some impact.
Yeah.
We do encourage, donations to support the early childhood initiatives here locally. Please share information about the Build, Learn, Grow scholarships for essential workers. If you're not familiar with that, we do have scholarships for essential workers. You can make any kind of money. We don't care if it's low, middle, or upper class. Everyone gets dollars to help support and offset tuition costs. So if you're an essential worker, you get a scholarship through the state of Indiana. So take advantage of that. Spread the word if you employ essential workers. Notes of encouragement to early childhood educators would just really be awesome. So, I mean, you heard Katie talk about the morale boosters, really anything and everything, catered lunches. I mean, sky's the limit when you think about something small and generous. It just goes such a long way with this community, and they're so appreciative. Encourage businesses to play an active role in solutions that make a long-term impact. We saw this during COVID. I mean, IU Health gave 100% tuition to their essential frontline workers. We partner with a local childcare center to save, receive, and reserve slots that only served IU Health workers. It was really a fantastic model. Something like that, I would love for it to stick, right? When we look at Cook, and they also gave a percentage of tuition payment for their frontline workers as well. Again, we partner with the center, they reserve those seats. And so we knew that, when they needed care, they had it. And so what an attractive package as employers are seeking future workforce and coming into Bloomington to know that they already have a spot secured. And we know that for infant and toddlers, that can be really hard. And then just future, as you mentioned, Efrat, I mean, something to keep our eye on is the Build Back Better Act. It's getting a lot of attention. It's generating some traction. Not sure that it's, in a shape that needs to be to pass, at least in our state, but we need to be mindful of what that could do in supporting us the long term for this childcare sector, but then also in thinking about, how it needs to be a little bit stronger. So.
Excellent. Excellent. I think we can help with that, can't we? What else, Katie and Courtney?
I feel like for me, that really hits the nail on the head. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Great.
Yeah, and I think when we're reaching out to our friends in office and the politicians, it's again, it goes back to that Band-Aid. It's longevity. So a lot of great support has come in through gifts and grants, PPP, and our recent REACH grants and things that are coming out. But we sit and we focus like this is something we can do to improve now. But what happens in 3 years? What happens in 5 years? So I think it's really the sustainability. We work on our end, but it'd be great if this attention on childcare didn't fizzle out in a few years and we had some sustainability and that we could trust in from that. So I think longevity, that our kids aren't going away. So let's not, forget that this is such an important thing. Getting in touch. I know we do volunteers. We do have volunteers back in our building. So don't hesitate to get in touch with us to see. I mean, of course, financial gifts are wonderful. Big financial gifts are wonderful, but little things are wonderful too. Just dropping off, a bag of candy that goes to our staff at one of the clubs, coming in and volunteering to be a reading buddy. So I think that's the thing too. Even if you're not a big corporation or a big group, remember that even the little things can make such a difference. So get in touch. Again, we can't reach out to you unless you've kind of gotten in touch with us. So I think that's a great first step, is just, either come in or check in or call us or email us and just let us know that, that you're out there in our community.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, I think we can all help with that. And, that's really the United Way theme for this year and the next couple, is to reimagine a better normal. So thank you for all your work in doing that, and for all your, just for taking time this morning to talk to us, to articulate all of these things and how we can help. And thank you to our audience this morning for being here. Again, this is Wake Up with United Way, a collaborative project of United Way's and IU's political and civic engagement program, with support from our series sponsor, Bloomington Township, our presenting sponsors, IU Credit Union and the Community Foundation of Bloomington, Monroe County, and program sponsors, Duke Energy and Old National Bank. And on November 11th, we hope you come back for the final one of this year. it will be a discussion with labor leaders and scholars on workers' rights. We had that discussion about a year ago with some of them. We're going to revisit it and see what's changed in the pandemic and how we can help once again. So hope you stay tuned for that. You'll all get an email in your inboxes with a recap of this and some links and great resources, and then the link to sign up for the next one. So we hope you wake up again with United Way on November 11th. And thanks again to Katie, Courtney, and Jennifer for this wonderful discussion. For all that you and your teams do, please pass along our gratitude. Thanks again, and have a great day, everyone.